The scene opens with chaos. An angry woman storms across a quiet driveway, her voice sharp and furious. "You can't park here," she screams, her words cutting like glass. Without warning, she swings her arm and smashes the side mirror of the rental car, the sound of shattering glass echoing through the neighborhood. A man stands frozen beside the car, shock and disbelief written all over his face. His fists clench, but he holds back, trying to stay calm as neighbors peek nervously from behind their curtains. Tension rises, every second pulling the audience deeper into the unfolding storm, a fight that's about to shake the entire street. It all began on a bright Saturday morning when David pulled into his driveway with a small silver rental car. His own SUV had been in the shop for unexpected repairs, and while he wasn't thrilled about driving something smaller, he was grateful to at least have a vehicle to get him around. The car looked simple, clean, and nothing unusual, but to his neighbor across the street, Karen, the sight of that car was enough to ignite a storm. David parked neatly in his own driveway, careful not to block anyone's path, and started unloading groceries from the trunk. Just as he was carrying a paper bag full of vegetables inside, he heard the sharp slam of a screen door and the unmistakable voice of Karen carrying across the cul-de-sac. "You can't park that here," she shrieked, her words slicing through the quiet morning. David froze for a moment, his eyebrows knitting together in confusion. Slowly, he turned, setting the groceries down on the hood of the car, and saw Karen marching down her front steps with arms crossed tightly over her chest. She was a small woman, but made up for her size with volume and exaggerated gestures, her expression twisted with disapproval. "Excuse me?" David asked calmly, trying to keep his voice steady. He'd dealt with her antics before, complaints about holiday decorations, minor yard work, and even the color of his mailbox. But this was a new one. "That car doesn't belong here," Karen snapped, pointing dramatically at the rental. "This is a private neighborhood, and we don't allow outsiders to just park wherever they want. You're breaking the HOA rules." David almost laughed at the absurdity but caught himself. "Karen, it's my rental. My SUV is in the shop and this is just temporary. I'm parked in my own driveway. I don't see how that violates anything." But Karen wasn't having it. She pulled out a thick, dog-eared HOA rulebook she seemed to carry around just for situations like this. She flipped rapidly through the pages, muttering until she landed on something she could use. "See here," she said, tapping aggressively at a section with her long, painted fingernail. "All vehicles must be registered and approved. You can't just bring in strange cars without prior notice. This is for the safety of the community." David sighed, rubbing his temples. He knew the rule applied to long-term residents or guests who planned to leave cars for weeks at a time. This was a rental he'd have for maybe 3 days at most. Still, Karen looked ready to declare war over it. Neighbors began peeking out from their windows, curious about the noise. A couple across the street whispered to each other, shaking their heads. "Karen's at it again," someone muttered. But Karen didn't care about the audience. She stepped closer, lowering her voice but not her intensity. "I'm going to call the HOA president. You can't sneak things past us, David. You think you can just do whatever you want? Not in this neighborhood." David kept his composure, though frustration bubbled beneath the surface. He knew if he raised his voice, it would only fuel her fire. "Karen, I've lived here for years. You know me. This is not a security issue. It's a temporary car. If you want, I'll email the HOA right now and explain, but please don't make this into something it isn't." Karen's eyes narrowed as if his reasonable tone only made her angrier. "Don't tell me what this is or isn't," she barked. "You can't park here. That car has to go." And with that, she pulled out her phone, dialing with rapid determination. David stood there, caught between disbelief and irritation, wondering how a simple rental car could possibly spiral into another neighborhood drama. As Karen made the call, her voice loud enough for everyone within 20 feet to hear, David leaned back against the rental and folded his arms. "Yes, it's urgent," she hissed into the phone. "There's an unregistered vehicle parked illegally in our neighborhood. We need it dealt with immediately." The way she spoke made it sound like David had pulled up in a suspicious abandoned van instead of his own rental car. Within minutes, the HOA president, Mrs. Reynolds, walked briskly down the sidewalk, clutching her clipboard. She was calm, dignified, and far more level-headed than Karen, though the annoyance on her face showed she already suspected what this was about. "Karen, what's the emergency?" she asked with a sigh. Karen practically pounced, pointing wildly at David's car. That doesn't belong here. He thinks he can just sneak in an unapproved car. What if it's dangerous? What if it lowers property values? You need to write him up." Mrs. Reynolds turned to David, arching an eyebrow. "David, is this true? What's going on?" David exhaled slowly, trying to keep his patience. "It's my rental, Mrs. Reynolds. My SUV is in the shop, and this is just for a few days. I'm parked in my own driveway, not blocking anyone. I didn't think it would be an issue." Mrs. Reynolds tapped her pen against the clipboard thoughtfully. She knew the rules, and more importantly, she knew Karen's history of overreacting. "Karen," she said gently, "the rule about registering cars applies to long-term situations, like if someone's roommate or relative permanently parks here. A temporary rental isn't a violation." Karen gasped as if betrayed. "Are you seriously going to let him get away with this? That car is an eyesore. Look at it. It doesn't even match the rest of the neighborhood. What will visitors think when they see something like that parked here?" David couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity. "It's a car, Karen, not a billboard. Nobody cares but you." Karen's face flushed, her voice rising again. "Don't laugh at me. This is about order and rules. If we start people bend them, the whole neighborhood will go downhill." Neighbors had now gathered outside, forming a small circle. Some crossed their arms, siding with David, while others shook their heads at Karen's relentless nitpicking. Finally, Mrs. Reynolds raised her hand, silencing the chatter. "Enough. David is within his rights. There is no violation here. Karen, I'm asking you to let this go." But Karen wasn't ready to surrender. "This isn't fair. You always side with him. You don't care about rules. You're letting chaos take over." Her voice cracked as she waved her arms dramatically, and at that moment she realized the crowd wasn't on her side. Whispering turned into light laughter, and Karen's face reddened further. David, still calm, picked up his groceries and walked toward his door. But before going inside, he turned back and said evenly, "Karen, not everything is a battle. Sometimes a car is just a car." The neighbors chuckled again, and even Mrs. Reynolds cracked a faint smile. Karen, however, stormed off, muttering under her breath as she disappeared back into her house. For the next few days, David noticed her blinds twitching every time he pulled in or out with the rental, but she never confronted him again. The neighborhood, relieved, returned to its usual peace. Yet the story of Karen versus the rental car became a favorite among neighbors, a tale told at barbecues and block parties with both amusement and exasperation. And though David's SUV returned soon enough, he knew that in Karen's eyes, he'd always be the man who dared to park a rental in his own driveway and lived to tell the tale.